o'clock and it's 1 minute to 3, so I guess we can start. So good afternoon, everybody. I guess before we call to order, I guess I got to read this little bit to inform everyone that this meeting is being held via Zoom teleconference and is being recorded. Like to ask all residents to hold their questions. At the end of each report, I'll request committee members' input, and following committee input, residents may ask questions. If you have a question, please click on participants icon at the bottom of the screen, and then the raise hand icon, the blue hand, I think, at the bottom. And this will indicate that you wish to speak. So I can see it on the screen and take you in the order that you raise your hands. Okay, so I guess the first item of business is to call the meeting to order. I don't know what that entails, but I guess I've done it. Okay, so looking at the agenda for today's agenda, I understand that Chris is going to be having to switch from the Zoom meeting to a teleconference or something halfway through. So I'd like to suggest that we defer the Belcarra residents' questions on water system until after we've covered number 10 on the agenda, so that we can have Chris hopefully available on Zoom when we're talking about those items. So I guess, I don't know what's involved in doing that, but can I have somebody move that we approve the agenda as proposed?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, and seconded by Doug, and Martin approved it. Jim Chisholm's got his hand up. Okay. Is there any discussion on the agenda other than the ones I've proposed?
Oh, it's a good start. Let's just get going with
Okay.
proposition.
Okay, so regarding the first item.
I'm sorry, Ian, just say all in favor so everyone votes.
Okay, all in favor? The agenda is proposed. Okay, passed.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, the number 3 item is the adoption of the minutes of May 21st, 2019 meeting. Does anybody have any changes or suggestions, or can anybody remember that meeting?
I don't have the minutes for that, unfortunately, but anyways.
Somewhat outdated, but sure, like no issues with those meeting minutes.
Okay, does somebody move to accept these minutes?
I move to accept it.
Seconder? Jim Chisholm? Okay. Moving right along then.
All in favor? Sorry.
Sorry about that. All in favor?
Thanks.
Unanimous? Good.
Great.
Okay, so item number 4 is the terms of reference that's been given to us. And I just wonder, could we just have them put up on the screen, Paula? Or everybody's got a copy of them. These are new terms of reference, and so I just want to sort of go through the terms of reference that we're to be following.
I do.
Okay, number 2 item, the Water Committee will recommend to Council if the village should proceed construction of a new reservoir. Water Committee responsible for gathering and communicating questions and concerns from the residents or engineering teams. Water Committee will serve as a public engagement lead when resident inputs requested. The Water Committee may, at its own discretion, also seek information and offer its own comments and recommendations to council. And the Water Committee may request information from the engineering team as it may be from anyone it feels could assist them. So the tasking of the engineering team will remain the responsibility of the chief administration or administrative officer. Okay, is there any discussion from the committee members on these terms of reference? Okay, I guess there's no concern. Do we need to move these or anything? I just think they've been given to us by council, so. Is there any need to pass them or, and they're sort of been given?
I guess you could move to receive them if you like.
Okay. Could I have somebody move to receive these terms of reference by the committee? Okay. Oh, sorry. Doug,
Like if you could, like if I could just add a statement after the terms of reference for public information, if that's okay. Ian?
Okay, that's what they're here in this minutes for, yes. So where would you like to see that?
No, it's right after the terms of reference. It's if you allow me to make the statements, I don't have to inform like Chris on this, but it's just for everyone's information as to the role of a professional order of engineers. Maybe not everyone is familiar or working with engineering firms, and so just like to state that it's in our code of ethics that engineers are to ensure that the protection of the environment, the safety and the health and welfare of the public is put in the forefront of all engineering work. And so just making sure that everyone like understands that. And Chris, I'm not sure if you have any comments on that.
Okay.
Sorry, I was really struggling to unmute myself then. No, you're right. That's exactly it there, Martin. That's one of the fundamental tenets of of engineering there for us in Canada is making sure that public safety is at the forefront and not cost, right? So I think a lot of the time when you guys ask me for my professional opinion, it'll always weight towards public safety, more towards a cost perspective.
Okay. I see Bruce, great, you've got your hand up and is that?
Thank you. And no, it's okay. You've passed the point. It's been addressed. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so do we need then to capture all that, Lorna, and that's going beyond what the council's given us.
Well, I think Martin was making a statement about what the engineer's ethics are. And
Right.
so I don't think that needs to be in the terms of reference, but that's good for everyone to know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, whoops, okay, Bruce?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. I'm sorry. Just a point on the terms of reference. This is what council has proposed. I mean, I think you could propose amendments to it, although I think it's pretty comprehensive and suitably broad. But you're not bound to just say yes or no, although I can't imagine what more you would want in the terms of reference.
Right. Okay, so can I have somebody move that we accept these terms of reference from the council? Anybody gonna move it?
I'll move it.
Doug, seconded by Martin?
Yep.
Okay. So,
Again, all in favor?
yeah, right, all in favor.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so can we skip ahead then from the questions to item 6? And item 6 is just a history, a chronological order of what's happened in the water system since, I guess, the Sassamat Fire Department was started. The intention was to try to link in what services and what equipment was available to the department for fighting fires, and to indicate where the 5 fires took place, starting in September 12th, 1993. It was the first of 5 fires of significant size that's been handled by the department. Also, I was trying to establish the what system was available at the time of the various reports and FUS letters, particularly the letter of August the 8th, 2010, which is the one we referenced in our interim report. So that basically shows that the system that we had was just tanks. We were just in the process of building the existing water system. So I don't, other than that, there was the chronology of building the system. There was the Hamber Island fire on June 13th, 2015. Then there was the Turtle Head fire with the 2 houses on April the 9th, 2017. And the August 2nd, 2017 fire on St. Clair Road. So those are just showing where they are in the chronology. There's 2 dates that I wasn't able to extract documented. There's a seismic valve change that went into Tatlow tank in 2017 after the Sinclair Road fire. I think it may have been before, I'm not quite sure. And there's a 2018 an actuated altitude valve at the Tatlow Reservoir. Also wasn't able to establish when that was installed. So it'd be nice if, Lorna, I don't know if you've got those dates.
I can look into it for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so is there any discussion on this chronology of the system? No? Okay, then I guess, is anybody prepared to move acceptance of this for the record? Jim moves. And
I'll second.
Doug seconded it. Okay, all in favor? Okay, good. Passed. Whoops, Bruce?
Yes, thank you. I'm just not quite sure when you're taking questions or comments from your audience. Ian, can that happen at virtually any time?
Well, it could, although I would like to, if we could, for questions, we were going to defer that until after item 10.
Okay, that's fine. I'll follow that.
Okay, moving on then to item 7 is the list of FUS letters that we now become aware of from the Water Committee. And it's there mainly as documentation. Starting from the 2010 letter of August 8th. And that was the only letter that we had at the time of our interim report. So other than that, all the other 6 letters came in later. Does anybody want to point out any information or discuss anything that's in these letters?
6.
I think the letters point out quite clearly that FUS is kind of behind where our water system is. Each one of the letters, they've becoming clear as to what system they were aware that the village had. So I think that's the intention, to just document what was available or what they thought we had. I'm not quite sure what they are aware of what our system is right now. So,
If I could just say a couple of words then. Okay, I mean, FUS, there's a lot that's been said about FUS, and it was various statements that were put into the interim report, which kind of documents it, just usual general information on FUS. There's a misunderstanding often when people refer to FUS. FUS are not a code requirement and not a standard as such, a legislated standard and a regulatory standard. They are, they serve the purpose to assist municipalities for insurance like purposes and insurance grading on the complete fire protection system in municipalities. I believe that Chris has made similar statements in various, like in various articles. So that's just a general statement on FUS. The second one is, yes, so once again, what Ian was just saying, the evaluation that FUS did in 2010, which was 2 years prior to the building of the actual system, was only an evaluation as to the design of the proposed Village of Belcarra fire protection system at that time. It is in no way an evaluation of a current capacity of the Village of Belcarra's like fire protection system. And there's in various correspondences and various statements have been made, there's been somewhat the statements haven't been entirely correct, so it's important that everyone like understand that. I mean, I can go on and explain what the various differences are. It's if there's an interest, I can clarify the 2 or 3 main points at this time. Ian.
yeah, that would probably be useful if you could.
Yeah. So. The FUS evaluation, they don't state it explicitly in their review, but we can deduct from the letter that they wrote in 2010 that they were indeed referring to the Dayton Night Design Report. You can see that the numbers correspond to the numbers which are in that report, and the description of the system is the same. And so what was being evaluated was the Belcarra design with a projected, you know, like when you design a system, it's for the next 25 years or so. It's a large infrastructure project. And so it was based on a forecast population growth of 1,250 or 1,200 population of Belcarra, which we know that we are nowhere close to that. And the forecast maximum daily demand of 13 liters per second, which and we are nowhere anywhere close to that. And I believe like Chris, for example, in his design brief, like used 2.5, which is from what I understand, just the best guess at that point, kind of a preliminary number. The numbers are, I'll go on about that at some future meeting. Our numbers are closer to 5 than anything else, and that can be researched in the SCADA data. And then, of course, we need to project as to, if we're doing any design, as to where we'll be in 25 years from now. So that was the FUS, the first point. The second point was with an agreed upon, based on an inflow rate of 13 liters per second from the District of North Vancouver. We have now, since 2016, that has gradually increased to around 19 or 19.3 liters per second, like on the average. So that is why our current system is nowhere close to what was evaluated by FUS. They had accounted for that, well, what the inflow you get, 13 liters per second from District of Vancouver, is what your demand is. And so we don't count any inflow into the system, and you solely rely on your reservoir to supply your potable water for residential consumption and your fire flow requirements, which at that time in the design report was based on the 30 liters per second for 1.5 hours or 1.5 hours. I can't remember.
1 hour.
1 hour. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's just say we are way beyond this minimum standard, this minimum requirements, which was evaluated by FUS at that time.
Okay, is there any other committee members want any comments on this before we move on? I'd like to use these letters eventually as reference points, so it's quite important that we consider what is said in each one of the letters. So as long as everybody's in agreement with the material, that's fine. We can. Does anybody want to move that we accept this list as the current list as of today? So that's the parameters for FUS as listed in on item your tab 7 of the notes of the agenda.
Okay, wait a second. Yeah, we're voting.
What's the reference that you're making to this May 28th, 2019 FUS letter?
I'm sorry, it's the list, the correspondence of FUS letters on item 7. So there's a list there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Chronology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had turned the wrong page. Yeah, the first page on section 7 is the list.
Yeah, chronology of documents.
Right.
Okay. No issues.
Okay. Would you like to move that then as being accepted?
I'll move we accept it.
Okay, Doug, and seconded. Jim Chisholm. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay, I guess the item number, what is it? 8. Okay, this is to do with our SCADA system. And the information that we've included in the agenda is there for residents. I'm sure that committee members all know what SCADA does. I'll just read it out. SCADA monitoring is an acronym for supervisory control and data acquisition. It's a computer system for gathering and analyzing real-time data programmed to generate alarms and notifications to the water system operators. Belcarra's water system design includes a SCADA system used to remotely monitor and control the system on a 24/7 basis, which negates the need to have staff on site for hours. Pre-programmed set points will generate alarms and email notifications for reservoir high and low levels, low chlorine levels, residuals, pressure zone pump status, emergency generator and fire pump status, high and low temperature, district to north fan supply flow, smoke and the carbon monoxide alarms. These functions then greatly reduce the time otherwise required to manually monitor and control the system. So I guess, could we just, I guess the first chart was to do with the Strathcona. And unfortunately, I should have put I put the wrong chart graph up. I should have used the graph that we used in our January 19th, 2019 meeting. And I don't know how well that'll go up, but that's the chart from that particular meeting, which shows the inflow rate for the last 3 years, or for the 3 years of 2016, 2017, 2018. I should have had that one up instead of the other one that's in the agenda package. Anyway, that's from the SCADA chart. So, yeah, Martin?
Yeah,
That's what I should have had, Martin.
no, just to say a few points on the SCADA system. Like Chris, if you just allow me, if I just so that I don't spend time saying this or saying things that you already know. Like how familiar are you with the village SCADA system, like right now?
To the point, I know you have one. You know, it's recording data. I'm not in there doing the
Okay.
programming or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Like fair enough. So there's a number of I don't have the exact number. So there are a number of measuring points in various systems. So just to come back to the graphs on the inflows from Strathcona, a bit of history that I got from village staff and a bit of information is that I have the graph. So in the list of information that I had prepared for you a few months ago, which is something like 60, 70 pieces of document. One of them is the Strathcona inflows dating from 2016, 17, 18, and the start of 19. And you can see there was a bit of unknown as to when District of North Vancouver actually started increasing the flows from District of Vancouver to Belcarra, because this agreement of passing from 14 to 21 only was signed last year. But in fact, they have been increasing the outflows from District of North Vancouver to Belcarra starting in 16. They ramped up slowly, and it was only in about mid 2017 that it got stabilized at around 19.3 liters per second. Now the agreement is, and you referred to this in one of your design memos, that they are supplying 21. In no time have they supplied 21, and I questioned that. And you may know more, but I was told that Belcarra doesn't have any control actually on on Strathcona, it supplies, it's District of Vancouver, which regulates the pumps on that side.
Yeah.
And Belcarra has no control on it. And so, like I said, it started ramping up early 17. I did a bit of looking at the SCADA data a bit more in depth. I was questioning whether at Turtlehead Fire, whether we actually had 19.3 coming in. And it's difficult to extract the information, but it appears that yes, we did have 19.3, and that is what village staff had confirmed to me at that time, that on that day in April 2017, it was at 19.3. So the agreements of District of North Vancouver, if you read the agreements, is they do not guarantee a supply.
Exactly.
It's a maximum. It's a
Yep.
maximum. They limit it to a maximum.
That's it.
And so that's where discussions of seeing what can be done to even attain 21 in the first place, if possible, and hopefully being able to increase that as an alternative, which should be looked at.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Exactly. I think that's one of the really important parts to this equation. I've said it a number of times at council, is that they not guarantee the flow at any point. Yeah, like I said at council a number of times, that District of North Van might be fighting their own fire, and therefore they might unfortunately say to you, "We don't have any water to give you. You're not having it." Now, the likelihood of that happening is probably very, very low. You know, that's why I have people like actuaries in the world to try and determine what that actual risk is. You know, but that's obviously something that we have to be cognizant of, and that's why a lot of times in these kind of systems, you just count the inflow a lot of the time and just say, what can our reservoir contain? Because that's what you have ultimate control over.
Yeah. So yeah, like we had discussed that at during the committees last year when we were discussing this agreement of District of North Vancouver, and I was questioning the legal terms in the agreement, which provides no guarantee. And so Lorna, so we addressed a question, if you remember, Lorna, and Lorna forwarded a question to District of North Vancouver, and there was a reply by some maintenance engineer. I can find that reply where basically they were just saying we would only reduce it in some extraordinary event where we have events on our side, so on and so on. That's the type of language I would have liked in the agreement rather than having this lawyer's statement. But we can forward that, or Lorna can forward that statement, that reply we got from District on North Vancouver at the time. If you're having trouble finding it, Lorna, I can go through my emails and locate it.
Okay, I'll look first. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, before we move on, I wonder if the committee would suggest that we put the this 3 charts for the 3 years in and substitute the one that's in the agenda. Would that be suggested, or should we just leave it with the 2018?
Yeah, no, like please do. It's more pertinent to have this history.
Okay. Do we need a move on that, Lorna, or is that just done?
It can just be done for sure. If you forward it to us, Ian, we will substitute it.
Yeah, it's right out of the agenda or the minutes from the January 19th, 2019 meeting.
No, I just sent it to you, Ian.
Okay. All right, so is that's sufficient right now? Chris, have you got any things that you'd like to say about that, the inflow chart that we've got from SCADA? Could you put that up on the screen, Paula, please? That the chart we got, the 2018, just to show it.
Okay, the one that's in the agenda now.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Yep, that's it. Great, thank you. Okay, Chris, have you got anything you'd like to comment on?
No, you know, like it doesn't. It's not. I have this information already. I mean, from my perspective, I suppose, just so you all understand what I'm kind of doing at this point in time with the analysis of the water system, that we're modeling the existing water system with the existing reservoir, with the existing capacity, and then what I would say, I'm interrogating that system now by applying a fire within the municipality and moving that fire around as well, and the type of fire and what have you. And really, what that means is I'm trying to determine a number of scenarios. How much water do you have right now, and how much flow would you use? It's 75 liters a second, or 60 liters a second, 30 liters a second, and how long would you be able to fight that fire for at this moment in time? And now the real big one for me personally, that I kind of need some input perhaps from the water committee or council, is to tell me what you believe is the right amount of water that should be used during a firefight. As in, should it be 60 liters a second for 2 hours? Should it be the actual bare minimum that the FUS requires to get you guys insured, which I think is like around 30 liters a second for about 1 or 1.5 hours? I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, you know, because I kind of was saying this to Lorna the other day. You can look at this in two terms right now for the municipality. You have a reservoir, you have water, and you have fire insurance. Like in reality, you have enough water because you have insurance. This is one of the things. Now, the real question is as a municipality, how much water would you like to mitigate your level of risk so you don't see more fires generated through the municipality? Because you have insurance. Therefore, it says that you're okay, you have water, you know, the scenario. However, for me as the engineer, I'd be saying, well, I think your risk tolerance should be, you know, 75 liters a second for 2 hours. Therefore, you're at a high level, you have what you need. Now, I know already that's going to say you need more capacity within your system. And now I would then go on with my report to say, to gain more capacity would be you gain either more inflow from the district of North Van, or you find another way of bringing water in if it's Metro Vancouver, or you create a well, whatever the case may be. Or the other one is say you need to increase storage capacity, and you need this much storage for this type of fireplace. And that's kind of like where my report is really heading towards in this regard, to try and give you guys the idea of this is what you have, this is what you could have. If you wanted this, this is what you really, really need to do. Like as a community, you need to decide where you want to have this fire flow at, because it's this amount of water that's really the driving force over if you need a reservoir, if you don't need a reservoir, if you need to increase flows, all the other bits and pieces. So when I look at this chart and it says to me, you know, you're roughly about the 19 liters a second, that's what I'll be generating through my report, saying, hey, you guys are about 19 liters a second historically. That's what I'm going to put your fire flow in. So not fire flow. That's what I'm put your inflow at in the model. I model it that way.
In the case where you're evaluating our current system, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would play around after the fact, saying, hey, if I wanted to keep the reservoir exactly the way it is, how much more inflow would we generate to even ourselves off, you know? And then say, okay, I don't know what the numbers are, guys, right now, but let's just say we needed another 15 liters a second. District of North Van, you know, question posed to them would be, can you supply that? If the answer is yes, okay, what would it require to get that? Is it the village of Belcarra would need to introduce some new pumps, change pumps, or whatever the case may be in your municipality? If it is, we'll do a costing exercise and say, okay, here's one of the options. The option is replace some infrastructure on the district side. It might cost you, I don't know, $1 million compared to spending $4 million on a reservoir. To me, you know, you still have the issue of the legal requirement for the district saying, we won't guarantee you these flows under a certain circumstance. Now, again, that might be leading you guys back to, hey, can we rewrite this agreement so you can give us some more guarantee over the amount of flow you'll give us? Other than, like you were just saying earlier, Martin, and attenuating circumstances of we all have fires, we get it. We might not get the fire flows that we want. We'll have to deal with it, whatever the case may be. You know,
Okay, good.
I have a question
yeah.
Is that good?
for Chris. Do you consider Dutchman Creek at all? And I just want to clarify something. Dutchman Creek has been filled by our system with potable water. Not that it's potable now, but it's not creek water anymore. We had it filled with from a hydrant across the street. What consideration would you give to Dutchman Creek at this point?
At this point, I'm not considering it because, as I understand it, is not hooked up to the municipal system. So therefore,
Exactly.
it's not allowed. I'm not allowed to use that as a source.
No, well, hang on. There's the two ways that it can be used as one for drafting from that hydrant that's right just off the street, and the other one is through relay. In other words, we could hook supply hoses to a truck, and it could supply maybe 1,000 feet or so of line to the truck, but that's about it in that area.
Yeah.
But we can use it for draft.
Doug, if I could just suggest that we defer this question of Dutchman's Creek to some
Other time.
well, like another time when we look at alternatives as to what can be done, because let's say, as Chris just pointed out, it's not connected to the current distribution.
No, it's not.
System and the fire hydrants, and so it's something apart which has only a water storage value right now, and so it's not part of our current system, and we could look at in some future meeting as to how it can be like integrated through various means. So let's reserve, if you don't mind, if we could just reserve that for some future meeting.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Bruce, you had a comment, your hand's up?
Yeah, sorry, I'll step back. I must say it's really painful to be an observer. I'm learning a great deal about the patience that's required. I'll leave it with you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Paula, could we put up the next the charts for the Tatlow Reservoir? Okay, good. Okay, so the top one is to do with the fire on Turtle Head. That's an indication. I hope I'm stating it right, Martin. Those are the levels of water in the Tatlow tank.
Yeah.
And the bottom,
okay.
and the bottom one is to do with the Sinclair fire.
With the Sinclair. Okay. If there's an interest, I mean, I'll go through it just to make sure that everyone understands. There's quite a lot of information that can be pulled from these charts. Is it possible to blow up the image? Like who's controlling the screen right now? Is that
Paula is.
Paula?
Hit the page.
If you could just blow up to the first graph. Yeah.
There.
Okay.
I just need to step out for 1 minute. I'll be logging back on in 1 second.
Okay, then we'll probably wait for you then,
Okay.
Chris.
Give me 1 minute. Okay.
Go ahead, please. Or like I'll initiate and then I'll repeat for Chris like afterwards.
Okay.
So this is on the vertical scale. Now the SCADA system doesn't really provide, it's wrongly labeled, and this was confirmed by village staff last year, but the vertical label is the percent fill of the reservoir. And on the horizontal scale is the time, is a time axis. Now it's a bit out of, it's difficult to focus, but basically this is the day or 2 days around the Tatlow fire. Now what's interesting in the graph is, now I can't have a pointer here, but if we start at the left, the water increases. And so this is the normal cycle of a Tatlow reservoir. Okay, so at the left, it's increasing. That is because there's an inflow from District of North Vancouver at that time. And you see a cutoff point, which is roughly at 90. Oh, geez, it's difficult. Okay, I have a larger copy here. Just hang on.
95%.
Yeah, so it's at 90. Anyways, like it's in the 90s somewhere, so it's 93, like 94%. So if a reservoir fills to 93% and then it shuts off, which is that first peak that we see, then you see it drop down, and it drops down. This is basically it's for water consumption, like in the village by the like residents. So it drops down over a certain time, and I'm just looking at the graph more closely. Each vertical line is 6 hours. So basically it drops down over something like a 12-hour period until it reaches, well, actually, no, in this case, it reaches the start of the Tatlow fire, which is where it drops significantly. Now, this is because of the intensity of a fire there. The fire department were all hands on the fire, and this is where they started withdrawing water from the system. At the start of the fire, the reservoir, unfortunately, was at the low end of the cycle. So it was about to be filled by District of North Vancouver, but it had not initiated yet. And so then there's a rapid drawdown. And the estimation here is it was in the order of, depending on how you calculate it, somewhere between 65 and 75 liters per second. And it basically dropped extremely fast over a period of, from what I recall, 55 minutes until the tank practically emptied to below 10%, around 6%. And that's where, from my understanding, but the fire department would have to confirm that, is where everything stopped, and basically the reservoir, District of Vancouver were pumping at all that time, and that's where the reservoir starts filling up until it reached just about the same peak or a little higher, around 95%. And after that, you see it drop. So this is after the fire, nothing to do with the fire. So we go back to the normal cycle in the reservoir. The reservoir drops from around 95% to around 65%. And then District of Vancouver starts pumping water once again, or the valves like open up and the reservoir fills once again to the third peak, roughly at 93, 95%. So this is the normal cycle, and also showing what happened during the Turtle Head fire. Okay. If we go to the second graph, the St. Clair graph. So here we see the same cycle. So like the reservoir, so at the start where it drops, this is the normal drop rate through residential consumption. It starts at around what, at 70, and then it drops to around 63. That's when the valve opens up the water inflows from the district. Then it goes up to around 93%. Then we see the next cycle where it drops again to 63 after roughly 12 hours. The pumps start initiating the infill of the Tatlow, and it goes up again, and so on. So what the SCADA shows here, and this is just pure SCADA data, it's not interpretation. This shows that at the second peak is where the St. Clair fire, you can see that it's dropping much more rapidly than the previous downslope. And this is because the fire hydrants are open, and the fire department is working on the St. Clair, and you can match the hours. This was on, I can't remember, August the 8th, I believe. No, August, it's written on the graph, so it's St. Clair, August the 2nd. So you see it drop rapidly. Now what is not easy to interpret here, what happens is during the St. Clair fire, the water drops. Now, where you see the bottom peaks, which are roughly at 63% of the previous day, that's where the valve starts doing the inflows of from District of North Vancouver. So something like 40 minutes after the start of the St. Clair fire, the inflow started increasing, and you see the slope continues down. There's a little bend in the slope. And so there's a change in the drop of Tatlow Reservoir, but that's at the time when the inflows start working from District of North Vancouver. So in fact, the flows increased halfway through, somewhere like maybe the fire lasted around 110 minutes. And so roughly it's something like 40, 50 minutes. I don't have the exact times here. There was an additional 20, which was being used by the fire department. And so in fact, the water being withdrawn from the Belcarra system increased at that time. So this is what the graphs show. And then obviously at the end, the Tatlow Reservoir levels never dropped below 35%, which is what has been stated on numerous occasions. And then after, of course, after the St. Clair fire, we see the Tatlow reservoir levels increasing back up to that 95%, 93, 95%, and so on and so on. So this is what the data shows. What's difficult is getting all the numbers behind it. This is a graph, but we can make conclusions like from the graph, which are pretty straightforward without going through the actual calculation of volumes and durations and so on and so on. But it can be done.
Okay. Is there
Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is there any other committee members have questions?
I've got a question about the minimum level where the inflow starts now. Are we still at around 63%? Do we know the answer to that? Seems to me we fluctuated a minimum 63% to start the inflow.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of correspondence, and I know Bruce was behind some of that. There was discussions with the village at that time, and they looked and I think they modified the valve settings, and I don't know what it was modified to afterwards, but it's stated in one of the reports. So previously it was 63, and it was increased to. Okay, from my recollection, Opus had suggested bringing it right up to a very high level of 80 or 90%. And for some reason, which is unknown, they weren't able to bring it up, or it wasn't set at that high level, but it's close. It's maybe 80% instead of 90%. That's very easy, is just going on the SCADA system, and there's a screen which shows the valve setting. It shows that percentage point.
I think, Martin, I think it's 80% or 85 at the peak.
That's the peak. What's the minimum?
I'm sorry, not the peak. Yeah, no, I'm talking minimum, and it was moved up. The concern was the impact on our chlorine levels if we didn't keep the water moving through the tank. I think 80 sticks to my mind, is either 80% or 85, that it doesn't decline to 70 any longer, is my understanding. That doesn't mean that's the case.
Yeah. So concerning the, anyways, it's a pity that Chris isn't here. It's just to.
No, I'm back.
Oh yes, he's okay. So Yeah, so Chris, of course, it becomes fairly obvious that, and this is probably any water reservoir system, the difficulty is that when the time when you most, let's say the highest probability as to when you'll need your fire protection is in the summer months rather than the winter months. Well, let's say there's a higher probability in the summer months. And it's in the summer months where you will have, let's say, more difficulty on the water quality in your water reservoir. So you need to balance you need to balance the water levels to meet both fire protection and the potable water like system.
Yeah, that's correct. You're totally correct. And the reason in the summer is it's harder because it's warmer, and so therefore the bacteria will grow quicker. So therefore you have to dose it more with chlorine.
Okay. Like Chris, like were you able to see the graphs?
Yep. I was only going for a minute.
Yeah. Like, are you familiar with these graphs or?
I've not seen this one in particular, but I understand what it's showing.
Yeah. So yeah, and basically like these can be obtained fairly easily from the SCADA system, and
yeah, for sure.
And so it's interesting, let's say, to do a like investigation as to what happens. It gives you an instantaneous record, or even Stuart or Bernie at the time were able to see this at any time and just like looking at the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there questions from other people that are participating on, I'm not sure how I can, oh, here it is. See if there's any hands up.
So just to just to verify the interpretation, if I could just point to anybody in the audience, maybe like let's try, or I could, yeah, let's try Jim here. Jim, if we like on those graphs, if you were in a situation where well, it depends on the circumstance, but if the fire hydrants are shut off, like what would you see on the graphs? Oh,
Go ahead.
Like Jim, are you able to speak?
Yeah.
Is he there? Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So it's just in the interpretation of the graph. So like you saw that during both graphs at Turtle Head and St. Clair, you had a drawdown of a reservoir much steeper than normal practice.
The one that went down to about 6%, to about 6%.
Yeah. So if you look at the Turtle Head, so what would have happened? Like what would the graph show if the fire department stopped using like the water? Like how would the curves behave?
Well, we just wouldn't have that deep bend in it.
Yeah. Okay. So so like I said, there's two cases. So if we are in a situation where District of North Vancouver is not pumping any water into our system, basically, and let's assume there's no residential consumption,
Right.
the curve would be horizontal.
Oh, yes.
The reservoir would stay flat. We are not drawing any water anymore and just stay
Correct.
flat. If
Yep.
we're in a situation where we are below that valve setting and the District of North Vancouver is pumping water, if the water withdrawal is cut off, we would see the water levels in the reservoir start to increase.
Correct.
And we don't see that in either the Turtle Head or the St. Clair fire.
No.
Okay.
There was one other comment I wanted to make though when I'm on here. Chris, what would be the minimum amount of tank that we would like it to ever go to before it either gives us problems with the system per se? I mean, we allowed this one to 6%.
Yeah, so So normally what that level is what's called the domestic demand has to be within the reservoir, which is basically saying you have to make sure there's some water left over to allow people to still run their taps. And so that's the level. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. It's a relatively small percentage.
But I mean, okay, if our domestic use though is in the order of 5 or 6 liters,
Yeah.
Does that allow us, if we hit 6%, isn't that going to be down there pretty damn low?
Yes, that is. I would say you're probably down below the required level at 6%.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, probably for information purposes, we should establish what that bottom line is. And that's where the fire department is virtually told, quit taking any water.
Yeah, exactly. And my report will say that, exactly that. It's like, this is the line where you need to turn it off.
Okay. I mean, that probably is a reasonable estimate for you to calculate pretty easily what's reasonable.
Yeah, so that gets generated via just doing the domestic demand volume. And it's just an easy calculation that gets put into the model.
Yeah. Okay.
If I could just add a point on that, or maybe ask Chris like a question, is the design guidelines are it doesn't say it explicitly, but the design guidelines is that when you are dimensioning a storage tank, there are two portions, and it's like in a common system where you are supplying both fire protection and potable water. The amount to keep, let's say, like the design of your water tank needs to account for what they call the maximum, like the MDD, what's the maximum daily demand?
That's right, yep.
For one day, for 24 hours.
Oh.
Yep.
And so in the original design, that was in the order of something 150, 200,000 liters, which was that amount. Let's say the design intent was for potable water. Now, whether, like I said, it's not said explicitly, we have to consider, in my opinion, but I'm not sure what the normal design practice is, that fire events are somewhat extraordinary events, and I'm not sure as to whether code or current practice would allow you to draw down the levels beyond that designated MDD, what we call the balanced storage.
Yeah, so to be perfectly honest with you, Martin, that really becomes a bit of a common sense evaluation during a fire event. It's what you really don't want to cause is a back siphon within the water system. In other words, you start drawing water out of people's houses into the municipal system, and that's why they kind of say you have to have this certain amount of water left over to ensure that doesn't happen. Because the short version of that is you don't control what's happening in someone's house, and they might have some dirty water somewhere. You draw that dirty water and poison everyone else in the municipality. Now, again, you have to play a bit of common sense here. Is that the fire's ranging, and you're pretty close to being put it out, you're going to say, let's keep on going below the 10%, because if we put just 5% more on this, we can put it out and we'll be done. So that's where it's a bit of, I would say it's a bit of to and fro from the fire chief and the superintendent for the water, and I'd say, okay, well, we're willing to go down to this point, but at this point, no, we definitely have to cut it off. Okay,
but so you feel easy from a designer's point of view of going below this what we call balanced storage amount, which is a fairly high number. It's
yeah, exactly. I think that's it, right? It's a fairly high number, but there's a certain point you say, hey, this is what design guidelines would tell you. And again, if we were really close to this margin line of like, do we need a reservoir or don't we need a reservoir, and we could take out a little bit of the storage and say we didn't, my recommendation would be push the limit a little bit. You're going to be okay, but just know when it gets to this point, there is no more reserve left. You have to turn the water off.
Okay, it sounds logical to me. I'm just not sure as to what the design practice is.
So yeah, but again, right, it comes down to this engineer. The guidelines. As you said, guidelines are guidelines. Sometimes there's a bit of gray area that you can play within, but ultimately you always have to think of the engineer point of view is we don't want to cause a back siphon pressure within the water main system. So where does that line actually exist? And make sure you don't step over it at all. And so that's why you have these relatively conservative values that make sure that doesn't ever happen. But like you said, in reality, 150,000 liters, that's actually quite a lot of water for a domestic demand.
Yep.
Right? So that's why I could write a few paragraphs on that report to say you could, however, it isn't always recommended to do this. You'd have to have a good reason of why you want to do this.
Okay, so but like the designer makes an election to selects a value, because like there's all the practical considerations of at least maintaining for health reasons the minimum level to be able to supply potable water.
Yeah, exactly. However, you got to think about this. We're kind of, excuse my French, you're going to spit ass backwards. That we're looking at a tank that's already built, that perhaps is maybe deficient, and so therefore that's where I'd be putting this gray area into it. If I was building a brand new tank and a brand new system, I would say this is the line, you're not crossing it, because we're building a whole new tank. We're going to ensure that this tank is big enough for today's fire flows and future fire flows as well. So that that's where like this gray area kind of gets introduced.
Okay, and your considerations of sediment accumulate, or not sediment, but
yeah,
some type
exactly.
of reaccumulation.
Yep.
Okay, understood.
Okay. I had a question, Chris, on your comment about the drawback from the domestic homes.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't the check valves that are installed on every house, wouldn't that stop that drawback?
Yep. But do you know if everyone inspects their check valves on a yearly basis? The answer is no. So from a municipal perspective, we can't rely on systems that we don't actually maintain and operate. If the village, say, had a system of everyone has a double check valve next to the water meter, which is accessed and maintained by the municipality, you would say yes, we could rely on that because we make sure that they're certified on a yearly basis.
I thought the check valve was installed out on the vault out on the road.
No, that's typically just a shut-off valve.
Okay.
You guys might be different, but I don't think so, because you guys don't run meters either, right?
No, that's right. But I thought that was part of the hookup, was a check valve installed.
We did install meters, but they're not being run and they're not being monitored.
Okay. Okay. Bruce, are you finished? You have your hand up pretty consistently. Are you finished, or?
No, that was just a comment on the meters. No, I do have some questions when the time comes in.
Okay.
For this.
All right. Well, I got Stuart Novak is with a question, and his hand's up. Can I?
Sure, I'll wait.
Okay, thanks.
I just wanted to clarify that we do have one-way check valves in the meter box themselves, as well as at the houses.
Yeah, I thought there was something like that going on. So anyway, I don't know if that makes any difference to the size of that water in the tank, but.
Well, to me that adds in another layer. You could say, the likelihood is you couldn't really have a backward side because we do have some check valves. But again, that's where I then would, as an engineer, say, okay, are they certified? Do you go and review them every year? Blah, blah, blah. And the answer, I think, is no. So therefore, it becomes this question again of, do you really want to rely on this? Because as an engineer, I'd be telling you not to do it. Right?
Fair enough.
But however, I could write in the report of like, this is the reason why you could push this envelope to some degree, because you do have some of these check valves. Maybe you want to do a program of certifying valves on a yearly basis or something if you really wanted to do this.
Could I
don't think, I wouldn't think those check valves are the ones that get tested. I know I've got one on our dialysis machine, and we have it tested every year, and it's quite a different check valve than the ones that are installed in.
Yeah, yours are probably a double check valve with a port and stuff on it. These simple check valves don't have ports and stuff that you can actually test, so it becomes a difficult operation.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So I buy into what you're saying. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, are we done with talking about the tanks then? Is anybody else?
Ian, I do have some questions, Ian, once you're clear.
Okay, on the tank, or we're almost up to the question section, but
Yeah, it's with respect to tank. Again, I'll wait till the question section. That's okay.
okay, thanks. Okay, I guess could Paula just put up the next listing of the major fires in Belcarra? That's section 9 of the agenda. No, it's right. It was the next one there. There it is. Good. Okay, this was put together from information from Doug. And I've added in the 1993 and 1994 fires, which sort of prompted the village to start implementing the water system. So there's 5 major fires that are shown in yellow. 1993, 1994. Then there was a gap, the Humber Island fire in 2015. Then the Turtle Head fire in 2009. There was the 2 houses there. And 2017 was the Sanker Road fire. Okay, any discussion on this? Just to show the frequency of serious, significant fire events in the village of Belcarra.
Yeah, we just need to clarify that Turtlehead Fire was 2017. It shows 2009.
Sorry, yeah, right.
If I could just say a few words, I mean, yeah, so this, I mean, it just shows a history of various events, which most people can recall. The intent of showing this, and unfortunately it doesn't quite illustrate that, is we are trying to find some evidence as to, because there's been a lot of discussions as to the urgency of increasing the fire protection. I mean, like, we all agree that we should it should be seriously looked at this time, but these historical events unfortunately don't illustrate that. They are a fairly infrequent event, and the likelihood of a fire in the next 5 years, in the next 20 years, is most likely no different from a probabilistic point of view as what happened in the last 20 years. And so you have to look at the big picture when you're planning large infrastructure work in order to prioritize your risks and your projects. And we just felt, after all these discussions in the village, that this seems to have it's taken on a life of its own, and everyone thinking that it has a big urgency. It's in our opinion, in the committee's opinion, or in some of the members of the committee, is that it is better to plan this carefully. It's something that's going to stay with us for 25 years. Than to urgently design a system which may not be appropriate and may not be affordable for the village. And so, anyways, that was one intent, and the other intent, unfortunately, has disappeared. And I can understand. It's because we were trying to compare Anmore with Belcarra, but just showing the intent. Is there any evidence that Anmore, with a better system, have they been able to save more to stop more large house fires than in Belcarra. Now it's somewhat of it's stretching things a little bit because the sample size is so low that making conclusions on such a small sample is maybe can be misleading. But we're just trying to find some data which showing which shows the emergency of of all this. Anyways, that was the intent of trying to come up with some numbers, and unfortunately, we weren't able to find anything.
Okay.
I'm not sure, like Chris, like, do you have any insight on that?
Not really. That's a bit outside my purview. If I had to answer that question, I would probably say that is why you have the fire underwriter survey, because that's how actuaries have already looked at it and why they set the numbers where they set it, because they try and feel like that's a way of mitigating risk, and hence why they'll insure you for a certain premium, right? Because that's the other thing when you look at the grades of an FUS study, is that the higher your grade is, the lower your premiums, because they feel that you're less likely to have a fire that spreads, because you have better facilities.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other discussion or questions on that section 9? Okay. Number 10 is basically, as I understand from Lorna, Chris, you've been tasked with reviewing with the District of North Vancouver the water inflow and their comment that they made regarding the possibility of a 30 liters per second to 60 liter per second increase. So am I correct that you
Yep, that's correct. That'll form part of the report once we've gone through the model stage here of looking at if it's required, as in you need more water, whatever the case may be, as an option, the District of Vancouver, what is it right now? We know what that number is, obviously, and what is the potential to increase that flow, and what is the requirement to increase that flow in terms of infrastructure requirement.
exactly. Yeah, the committee's been very interested in their statement on preliminary estimate capital upgrades to the Village of Belcarra system, 2 to 3 million, but we weren't sure what that meant or why they were putting that sort of statement there on the table. So I guess.
Yeah, so I intend to have that conversation once we have the information, and then because to be honest, guys, I don't know what the number's going to say. It might say, hey, we only need to get it to 40 liters a second, which might be a drastic decrease in capital cost infrastructure compared to requiring 60 liters a second. So I want to go armed with a number that's actually required before I go to them and say, hey, what's required? Because there might be two different things.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, it's. Jim, I know you've had some questions on that twin pipe and stuff.
He's muted.
I know, I'm trying to unmute him.
Oh. He's good.
You good now? Oh, he isn't. Ah, I got a helpful little thing here. Jim?
Who's muted? Jim?
I can't get I got a little helpful box comes in front of me.
There you go.
How's that?
Good.
The question, Chris, would be: is there any problems with in the design into this, like the pipe size that's going across there, 8-inch pipe? If we were to get 60 liters from those people over there, will a pipe system handle it?
The answer is I'm pretty sure it will do, yes, because you have a twin system and you only currently operate one. So the scenario might be that you might need to use both of them to get your maximum flow through. However, if you need to do operations or maintenance on it, you may need to cut one of those pipes off while you replace one and vice versa. So that would be the only downside to it, that you'd have a risk factor introduced if you need to do operations and maintenance on it.
But the thing is, though, our system is totally designed around 8-inch pipe. The dual pipes over there is just a spare for just crossing the water. Once you get to the place like adjacent to my house, you're back to one pipe, and that's it. So what I'm asking is the 8-inch pipe excluding?
I understand what you're asking, but it's, to be honest, from an engineering perspective, it's a really hard answer to question. It's a really hard question to answer straight away, because it comes to do with pressure as well, and how much pressure you can induce into the line to force the water through. It isn't like a gravity system where I can tell you, yeah, it sounds about right, because gravity will tell you. Because ultimately, you can push through whatever water you like through a pipe, but the problem is you have the PSI, so that the pressure rating within that pipe to be able to take that much pressure to push that water through.
So do you assume that they'd be prepared to push the pressure up on the other side to get that double our capacity, if that's the ratio?
Yeah, for sure, right? The pressure is definitely going to increase, I would say. But you do have some good Stuka pipes in there, which can take a very high pressure load. So that's one of the questions that will be raised and looked at during the study, is making sure that, hey, okay, great, we can get 60 liters a second. What would be the PSI within the system? Okay, great, the system can take that as well. If it can't, then it kind of adds in this other cost, right? You're going to say, well, we could get the supply, however, your conveyance system can't convey it in the current system, in this current format. So therefore, you're going to have to replace all your pipes with X, right? Which is obviously going to reduce another large cost into the upgrade, where you might be like, well, this is a bad idea. Now we should go back to the reservoir system because it's cheaper.
Yes. Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could just note the capacity of our distribution system will have to be assessed in some form or fashion, whatever the alternative is going to be. I mean, to increase the flows at the fire hydrants, you need to increase the pressures, and so your distribution system will need to be assessed. And as I had pointed out in the interim report, there's some questioning as to the capacity of a distribution system. There's been some increase in consumption, which is abnormal over the years. There's been a 10 to 15% increase in water consumption since 2013, every single year. Now, I had a discussion with Bruce on that, and he did point out that the number of residences has increased also, which partially explains that. But the increase in residential hookups to our water system is nowhere close to that, like 10 to 15%. And so normally when you start increasing that much year after year, it's kind of there's red flags which are normally put up as to there's potential leakage in your system.
Yeah, that would be exactly where my brain would go to straight away, Mark. Is that if that's the current increase, and continually increases, you probably have a leak somewhere.
Yeah, so I asked Lorna a couple of weeks ago if the new water quality report has been issued this year, and I think that it's delayed a bit. It should be issued shortly. Or
That's right. It was the requirement for it to be posted by Fraser Health is the end of August, so it will be done by then, and that's due to COVID.
Okay. So apart from that, the only value which I'm bringing out in this report is the total volume that was consumed in 2019. So that's only a very small line inside the whole report. Is it possible to get that information from village staff?
Well, it'll be done, within the next while. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I would say though, mine, the water quality report. Well, I think I hear what you're saying. You just want to know what the overall volume is, right?
Yeah.
To lay it against the others. Okay, fair enough. I was going to say, because otherwise, already the water quality report doesn't really help to indicate if you have leakage or not, other than you want to do the analysis of how much water you've been using year over year and say it keeps increasing.
No, correct. It was just it was only the available source of data on the total volume that we had last year. It
Yeah.
was on the first paragraph inside the water quality. So it's not water quality report I need. It's just that one number, which wouldn't be very hard to get. It's just going to the SCADA system and asking for it.
Yeah, I don't understand. Okay.
Jim, I see your hands up. Are you asking another question? Whoops, you're muted. Okay, nope, you're muted. Okay, Jim, are you got something further to?
No, no, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to this discussion? I guess, Chris, your plan, what have you got a time frame to do this discussion with District of North Van?
Not a time frame as such, but the report needs to be ready for before council come back to sit. So I would say in the next couple of weeks or so.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, I guess then we could move on if that's okay, Laura. But
Sure, you go ahead.
Okay, I guess this is the section where item number 5, is it? The questions on the water system from the residents of Belcarra. So I guess we've got several questions. I guess, Bruce, I put down a couple that you've asked, and you may have the answers already, but you talk about Metro having its own water tank above the oceanfront park for potable water delivery, and we know its size and altitude. So that, I think, fits in with the same discussion on Dutchman's Creek. So I think that would fit in with the future discussions on water tanks and how they fit into the overall system, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I guess the point Chris is making, that for the sake of, if I understand him, for the sake of firefighting, you simply don't consider alternative sources of water, which, as Doug pointed out, can be used for shuttling. And they may have been the basis for our fire protection not that many years ago, i.e. about 9 years ago. But we don't consider them in terms of calculating our firefighting capacity today, if I understand the exchange properly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it does raise a question. I don't know if it's among the ones I'd submitted, and I have raised it several times. It inevitably leads to a reaction of horror from anyone familiar with water systems and proper maintenance of them. But my question was this, that if you had, is there a way in which a storage tank, let's use Dutchman's Creek as an example, which is about the size of Tatlow, can be connected into a system under emergency circumstances? So can the water be so treated, and I guess it would mean with an excess of chlorine or replenished frequently enough, that if you had to, you could connect it into a water system during what appears to be once in a 5-year cycle of having a house fire, and use that water to fight the fire without creating a massive expenditure and safety risk with respect to residents? Now, maybe nobody on this call is qualified to answer, but it just strikes me as a question that we should address.
Yeah. I guess the point here is that on a potable water system, there is boil water orders.
Yeah.
It could be implemented. gonna have, this would have to be taken up with the health authorities to see what they would say if you had a strong protocol to implement when you did such a thing. Would they accept that heavy chlorination as until you could then recertify your system?
Yeah. So I guess in my simple mind, Ian, it's let's assume, and I recognize it's a huge assumption, but let's assume we can go on the excessive safety basis, as I say, of over chlorinating that water. It's within the lifespan in which it may taste appalling, but it's not going to be a health risk to people. And then recertify the system. I mean, if that's going to cost me, I don't know, $100,000, but I only have to do it once in the next few decades, it might be a good option. I don't know the answer. And as I say, people who manage water systems are generally aghast at the question. So it may be beyond the realm of even consideration.
Boil water orders are after you drink it, and the boiling water will evaporate the chlorine out of the water, but the boiling process. So there won't be any chlorine left in it.
Okay. I obviously, we just don't want to hurt anybody. And again, it's a very rare event, but I just think it's something we should be aware of as an option. I appreciate it's an outlier.
Yeah,
But
it
if
is.
I could just comment on that. I mean, it's not from a, it's for the designer to say, but it's like normally you would not design a system as such.
Crazy.
Once again, engineering code of ethics is you got to maintain the health and the safety of the public, and there is a risk on that. And polluting your potable water,
Polluting your system,
not an avenue, even though it's an improbable event. It could lead to a lot of other issues, and not having potable water over an extensive period of time. And it's to me, I wouldn't be comfortable with that, but that's for the designer to.
Yeah, well, that's sufficient to me. I just want to be sure we've looked at every conceivable option.
But
yeah, I would agree with you, Martin. It's saying the same thing. For me, as an engineer, I'd be telling you, you're not doing that. It isn't about boil water. Boil water advisories come after the fact that you have a polluted water source. What would happen in that circumstance is that you'd run your reservoir and be like, oh crap, we need to turn on the other reservoir to give us storage. Well, how would you get the message out to all the residents not to drink that water at that point in time? Right? And so I'd be saying, no, there might be a risk of some property burning down. That's unfortunate, but however, lives aren't at risk. The other version is you're putting a lot of people's lives at risk. So I'd be like, you're not doing it. From my perspective.
Quick comment.
Like we're going a little far because there are other options with Dutchman's Creek, which we will discuss in some future meeting as alternatives, and it can be done.
Can I make one quick comment? I was up in West Kelowna. They had a boil water advisory. I think their creeks were running, more than normal, and it somehow impacted. But they had boil water advisory signs throughout the West Kelowna area. Road signs.
But these aren't planned events, as Chris just said.
No.
You don't design a system
No.
with this option.
Okay, could we move on? The second question that Bruce asked was regarding the measuring instruments up in Tatlow Tank. And we're talking about the reduction in the volume of water in that tank. Current limit, 244,600 liters. So I guess the answer, what I suggested was that Tatlow Tank has a 244,600 liter usable volume of water, not 300 that most of the literature shows.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Ian. This is one of the numbers that your committee corrected on your first one of your interim reports, and I was a little taken aback because my understanding had always been it had a capacity of 270,000 liters, and I appreciate you really have to research these things. So I guess my question, one answer I had was given at one point was the measuring equipment needed a certain distance above the water or it couldn't function. And so my question was, well, couldn't we just raise the measuring equipment and the roof, if necessary, up a little so it had that distance and get the full 270,000 liters, as I understood it to be. But I accept your comment. If that can't be done and our capacity is, as you cite here, 244,600, then I'm happy. I just wanted that clarified.
That's what it is.
Who responded that can't be done? Did anybody assess that, or?
We heard that, I thought, from Bernie. He did the measurements in the tank.
Yeah, no, okay. So yeah, no, what was explained to us, and I questioned Walt Bayless from Opus on that. He didn't confirm the number. This is a number that Bernie provided us, and I just questioned Walt as to why this usable volume is not indicated on the record drawings, because it's the capacity of the tank is something related to the tank fabrication drawings, but in the system drawings on the record, you should have the usable volume, not the ultimate capacity. Now,
You're right.
yeah, but as far as the can the valve be displaced, like you can do all types of work, and so it may be a different type of valve which can be located at a higher level. I mean, this is a design question, and it's one that maybe Chris can look at if there's a need to do so. Let's say if Tatlow is maintained in whatever alternative. Can we raise that valve, that air valve or whatever it is at the top of the tank?
I thought the guys had. I think we were talking to Brad, and they had installed a new altitude valve.
Right.
I think that, again, we need to clarify, but I think what that may have been was the introduction of a valve that could be remotely controlled. And nobody has ever told me that we gained additional storage capacity in the tank. As I say, I was not aware it was limited. It was your report that made me aware that it only had this capacity of 244,600. It may be that getting 10% more is, of no great significance given the other issues we're wrestling with. I just would like to know if that could be done at a relatively modest price, then it might be a factor worth considering.
Yeah. Stuart, you had a comment?
Another 500 gallons? Piss.
No, it's 10. it's 10% more, Jim.
It's significant, but anyways, it won't provide us what we need. But I'm just saying, depending on the alternative, which is deemed to be or recommended or alternatives proposed to council or whatever, it should be looked at as to whether this valve can be modified in order to increase that usable volume.
Anyways, I just wanted to clarify about the valve. It was an altitude valve that got opened up through atmospheric pressure, and now we have a mechanical valve that opens up mechanically. So we can, if there's a fire, for instance, we can open it up as soon as we hear there's a fire, and start getting the water flowing into the tank as the system is draining from a hydrant source. And with respect to the height of the water, that's an issue from atmospheric pressure versus the pressure of the water we got pumping through the system. So we're at the maximum height.
Yeah. So Stuart, sorry, does that again come back to the summary that's provided here, that the tank cannot go beyond 244.6?
I would say unaided. I mean, any complication can be remedied, but as it is now, it can't be.
Stuart, are you saying it's because of the head from the district? That's why you can't go any higher?
That's what I've been led to understand. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, and that is consistent with what I think, Jim, you once commented on, that it was simply, if we left the system alone and stopped draining it, that's where it would stop, for the simple reason that that's what the gravity feed was from the district of North Vancouver.
That's possible if you're listening. Can you hear me?
I can, Jim, but I think you mentioned that to me once.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the answer now because we've made so many adjustments on these start-stop levels.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what it is today.
If I could just draw everyone's attention to the interim report and to the response we got from Walt Bayliss, the designer of the system. He doesn't relate it to the pressure from district or North Vancouver.
No, I think you're right there, Martin.
Okay, and what did he relate it to?
I would have to just hang on a minute.
Yeah, look, I can get this by email later. It's fine. It was just a question I had, and I wanted to understand that, one, and two, as I said earlier, it was, for me, one of the surprises that came out of the work you did previously, because I was never aware we didn't have the full capacity there of the 270,000.
No, it wasn't. It's not documented anywhere. This is information we got from village staff. And so, if anybody can verify that number, because I don't know where the number comes from.
Look, I appreciate that at the end of the day, as Jim suggests, it may be immaterial, but 10% more, if it's relatively inexpensive, might be a factor. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, here, yeah. Anyways, I can find Walt's response to that.
Okay, so basically we don't have an answer for that then? Just leave it and look further?
Okay, so actually I found his response. So when we question him on the 244-600, he says it was due to the clearance between the underside of a roof and the level monitoring equipment.
Exactly.
A 1 foot clearance is required, otherwise the instruments lose the monitoring capacity.
No, yeah, that's my question, Martin. I mean, how expensive would it be to lift the roof up 2 feet and get the instruments higher? if that makes a difference, I don't know. It may be that it's so immaterial, 10% more water, that it's not worth pursuing. But I'd just like to know.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any more discussion on that? We move on. Jim?
Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, the other thing is, don't forget, at one point in time, we were going to take a section off the other tank, and we may be up against a seismic problem all over again.
True.
No, but like the intent of raising would not be to add water. It would just to be install the valve at a higher location. So you
Yes, maybe you can just put a hole in it and take the protrusions.
and so you wouldn't increase the pressure in the tank.
Yeah. Martin's correct, so that's fine.
Okay, should we move on then? Is there any other? Okay, I got a couple of items here from Mayor Neil Blanky. Here's the Water Committee's not willing to provide a recommendation of fire flow to council. I'm not sure that we are going to be in a position to recommend a fire flow. And I think, Bruce, you made the point is liability.
Well, I would think the same would apply to Chris. I mean, if you're a professional and you've been asked if your objective is fire safety, you'd have an unlimited amount of water for an unlimited amount of time. And if you're going to recommend something less than that, then it would be important that you have lawyers involved so you're not liable. And my understanding is that's exactly what council gains. Council makes its decision based on the advice and should exercise due diligence in coming to that conclusion, but it can't be sued for having making the wrong decision. I simplify, obviously, but for that reason, I don't think anybody is going to make that recommendation other than the council.
Yeah, if I could just respond to the formulation of that statement from the mayor is the message is, and I can have Chris comment on that, and I understand that he's in agreement, is that it's one of the specific reasons as to why the National Building Code doesn't provide fire flow requirements for municipalities. It's all a function of what a municipality can afford and what infrastructure they have. And so it's very cost dependent as to what the municipality can afford. That is the underlying factor. So for anybody to indicate, you just can't say we need 200, we need 300, we need 75. It's all what are the costs, and then you make your selection as to what you can afford.
That is it exactly. Yeah.
It's a basis, and of course, as Chris has pointed out, the risks and the costs, and so you educate and you formulate the recommendations, and it is the authority having jurisdiction which sets those values. So why does the committee not provide a number? It depends on the affordability and the cost. So this is the exercise that the committee is trying to put forward. Let's evaluate various alternatives and evaluate the trade-offs between one and the other and the costs. And then, obviously it's council to see on how to put a plan together, like an asset management plan or rather a financing plan as to how to pay for it. The decision on what the fire flow requirements needs to have all this information before.
If I could just add, I agree with all that. I can just add, I mean, I was standing beside the fires on Turtle Head when the system got shut down because we had run out of water, or we're down at 6%. And I can assure you at that point with flaming embers falling on our neighbor's home and on our own roof and on our decks, I would have set a very high, level of flow that I thought was desirable at that moment. So I appreciate these are difficult calls.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. I wonder if any of the resident participants or the other counselors have questions that material we've covered so far. So we could try and answer that and in the time remaining. Is there anybody else interested in any specific topic? Okay, well.
Lisa, do you have a question?
I was just looking for my hand.
Okay, that's okay.
Sorry. I just want to, I don't have a question actually. I have been listening from the beginning once I finally got myself on at the nick of time. And I just want to say how much I appreciate sitting in on this meeting today. And I would, if there's more of them, I will continue to do so. I think Bruce is our little council expert here sitting beside us. And I appreciate everybody's comments and concerns. Okay. And all the hard work that you guys have been doing. Oh my goodness.
Glad you could stop in, see us.
Even though I had my video off, I was listening.
I know, I saw you there in the corner.
I came home from work early to listen in.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm gonna mute myself again. Bye.
Bye now. Okay, is there any others? Bruce?
Thank you. And I don't want to block anyone else. I had jotted down some questions as you went through, but I appreciate that we seem to be on track and on time, which is no small achievement, Ian. Thank you. I had a number of questions I'd just like to go through quickly. I think one, and Martin made the point, with respect to the number of fires we've had, it's such a small, I think the sample size is so small, I'm not sure how much we can take from it. The only thing that strikes me as odd, and I don't know if there's any lessons to be drawn from it, our larger fires all happened after we had additional capacity. Because you back up a few years, we had next to nothing, as your report summarizes. And in fact, I do remember one fire being fought based on the Dutchman's Creek tank that was put in as a shared water source for users. And for those who are worried about health, you don't want to know the details of how that system worked. So, but it nonetheless had a tank up near where we now have a Dutchman's Creek tank for the village that is now filled by the fire department via our own system. So it doesn't have the problems it once had. But that tank was used to fight a fire. We just seem to have gotten by the skin of our teeth on more than one occasion, and I include Turtle Head in that example, by having to have the capacity we essentially require. That's more of a statement than a question. So I do believe on the second point that there is a widespread and understandable misunderstanding of the function of the fire underwriters. And you talked about that at the very beginning. Even some of the questions you've got in, and some questions we've had at council meetings when this comes up, people assume someone is going to give us the standard as though they were going to give us, you know, building code requirements. And it's been pointed out, and I think the fire underwriters themselves pointed out very well in a letter or two ago when we asked for their assessments and their comments. Their role is very, very receptive to the variety of communities, their financial capacity, the supply of water they have, the nature of the fire department, the level of training, the presence or absence of paid firefighters, and then a lot of other factors, which Chris has noted, and which our tree committee noted, which really has to do with, you know, our proximity to forests here. So people that think the fire underwriters are going to give us a single standard, I think are mistaken. It's not going to happen. Not that they can't provide us useful information. I did wonder why we've seen this gradual increase from the District of North Vancouver up to, you know, to 19.2 or 19.4 liters a second. It seems to be so slow, if I read the graphs correctly, that I'm not even sure it was a purposeful intervention. Maybe just their pressures have increased slightly at that end. But in any event, obviously we can leave that alone until Chris has had the conversation with them and we see if there's any flexibility. But if we can get 21, maybe we ultimately will have to go back to them to make sure we're actually getting the 21 they promised. A comment on the risk of simultaneous fires, I think that is, you know, so there is no such thing as perfection, but the likelihood that they would be fighting a fire such that they couldn't help us strikes me as pretty unlikely. And obviously we can ballpark that, but we are so small and our results will be so erratic in terms of fires that I think it would be hard to really assess what that risk is. I just want to mention that some years ago, I was involved with discussions with fire departments in an entirely different capacity, having to do with mutual aid. And this is the provision of one fire department to assist another. And they were trying to work out a protocol by which they could determine how much equipment was available for a given fire department. Let's say Burnaby, for example, what could they count on to be available from Vancouver or vice versa? And they had enormous problems because nobody wanted to admit that they had surplus equipment or capacity. I mention that only because I think you really have to understand the nature of the service provision, and I'm sure we'll get that before we're done, before you can make a judgment as to how great the risk is. All of those chiefs, and I talked to them afterwards, were all willing and indeed did support one another whenever it was necessary, but they would not commit themselves in writing simply for legal reasons, number one. And secondly, I learned because, you know, if you admit you have surplus equipment, it could put you at a severe disadvantage next time you went to your own council seeking an augmentation of your budget or additional capital purchases, quite frankly. Very human action. The reality was they would help one another, but they weren't going to admit it in writing. So sometimes these things can be quite complicated.
Right.
8-inch pipes, we dealt with that one. I think that's all I've got to say. I just want to reiterate Lisa's comments that this has been extremely valuable to me. I really appreciate the work all of you are doing. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, with that summary, then I think, oh, Martin waving at me.
Well, it's just sort of like a suggestion, Ian. I just before we close up, if we could just inform the various people as to what the intent is to discuss in the future meetings, even prior to putting an agenda, just ideas which are bouncing as to what the next meetings will be. Are you comfortable doing that, or would you?
You just read my mind. I was just going to move to next steps. And I was wondering, okay, what's the committee's views on the next meeting and next steps? We have Chris going over to District of North Van, and I'm not sure he has a report to present to council. Is that
Chris?
September?
I believe Chris's report will be to council on September 14th.
Okay.
That's the first council meeting in September.
Okay. So that will be very enlightening for our committee, and certainly, wouldn't it?
What's the contents of the report exactly, Chris?
It's going to be the model results. So, you know, it'll be the background to how the model was put together, the model results of existing capacities and what have you, and then what deficiencies might be developed from the different fire flows, as in, you know, I might end up doing a 30 liters a second, a 60 liters a second, a 90 and a 120, and then, you know, kind of document what the deficiencies are at each point, and then recommendations on how to overcome those deficiencies.
Okay. Okay, because one, if I can, like the way we wanted to maybe go through it is at the next meeting. Well, we wanted to discuss FUS. I'm not sure if it's pertinent to go any further. I think we've had that exchange today. I can't remember what the other topics were, but on the second meeting. Potentially discussing your initial memo, and so if we do this in August, it may bring out some issues over the memo and some questioning and some things which you should integrate into your September report.
Yeah. We can't have a committee meeting in August. It would have to be the beginning of September.
Oh, it's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be, the next one would be in September.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Eventually at the third meeting is where the meat is. We would like to discuss as to have a brainstorming on various alternatives which could possibly be explored. And so after you've done your report, it may be like a proper time to do that.
One of the dates, and we can discuss this and let the committee know, but since the council meeting will be on Monday, September 14th, I thought later that week, the committee may want to meet. So I thought Wednesday, September 16th, if you want to stick with a Wednesday. But we could confirm that over time.
Yeah, I would prefer having a little bit of time, at least a week,
okay.
A week to look at the Chris memo before.
Sure. Okay. Good.
Because the memo would probably be put into on February before the meeting, and so to prepare a useful discussion for following Wednesday is kind of short.
Okay. So I'll talk to Ian and we'll pick a later date then for sure.
Okay, so is there any other ideas what next steps might be? Okay, just for discussion, I had an issue regarding the risk assessment and trying to determine the size of the houses in Belcarra. I'm wondering if that would be of any value or any use when we're talking about average size of homes.
I would say yes, because that would be something that I would be using within my report. It'd be building upon the memo that I put together a few months ago now regarding the size of homes and the requirement
of water to fight, that type of building. So the short version is that reading more through FUS and some new draft documents is that they're kind of saying that you should really discount the top 5 buildings because again, it's kind of like this risk tolerance side of things. You should try and look for the average size home more than anything else. So
Right.
I think that would be a nice way of going about and saying the average home is this in municipality. So this is what we're going to try and size our system to.
Exactly. That's what I was, we got a whole month of August to put that numbers together for you if it's helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, I have some reservations on that because of it. Otherwise, like the difficulty in upgrading any water system in an existing municipality is somewhat difficult to make. It's a question that council will have to decide on at some point. But I'm not sure I want to discuss it now. But like when should we have this discussion?
Well, I just like to, if there's a suggestion to go ahead and just get the numbers, I'm not going to do the evaluation. But I mean, there is different places you can go to get the square foot area of different houses in the village, right? And just putting that together in a big list would be the first step. After that, we can decide what you do with the numbers.
I would still prefer, in my opinion, of having more than one value. Let's say it can be 6,000 square feet, but rather having 2 values, because it will definitely have a dramatic impact on the cost.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the individual houses. You go to the property assessment says how many square feet is on there on the house.
Okay, anyway, so like we'll have this discussion.
Okay, I'm missing something? I'm not sure.
Here's what I'd recommend there is a bit of an amalgamation is that if we can find, let's just call it an average house in Belcarra and note what the address is, because then what we can do, we can run through the FUS evaluation criteria of how you determine flows. I'd say you should have this amount of flow in your municipality. Like I kind of put in my memo a while back and I kind of did it on the village hall. Maybe we can look at that and say, hey, this is the average. We do this after I've done my report as well. See, the average home is X. And, if we look back in Chris's report and it says, hey, we're looking at 60 liters a second or 120. Well, this particular average home says we need roughly 90 liters a second. Well, great. Like maybe that's where the needle should swing towards the evaluation criteria on the recommendation side of things.
Okay, well, I guess we're kind of running out of time here, but how about if I try and put something, get an idea of where we're going to go and get some numbers, see if this mythical house can show up somewhere and figure out what the average house might look like. I don't know that there's such a thing in Belcarra. They're all individuals.
It's the challenge, and we discussed that at the committee meetings last week. It's a challenge in Belcarra because we go from one extreme to another and trying to find the average house in Belcarra. Good luck. It's more than size. It's also on the topography. Some are 4 or 5 stories high on steep banks. Some of them have 15 feet ceilings. And there's different constructions. There's a steel, there's concrete, there's wood. And so, and Chris, all of those factors come into play.
Yeah, you're right. That makes a big, huge swing on fire flow requirements. So maybe we just park this for now, and I'll just kind of write up the different kind of evaluations for the different fire flows, and we can kind of maybe backstep and say, hey, this is. I'm trying to think what the final outcome could be. Is it that you'd want to give a recommendation to council to say the maximum square footage of home in the village should be X, or Yeah, because I know we all know that that would open up a huge can of worms that I'm sure council do not want to get anywhere close to.
It already has opened up a can of worms.
It has.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hallelujah. Yeah, don't suggest you're going to limit the size of homes dramatically. But I would ask just a quick question, Chris. If we learned, and I was actually surprised at the number of new homes that have sprinkled themselves. So they're bigger homes typically, not always.
Chris, unmute.
But when we sprinkle a home is sprinkled, would you still, surely that would reduce the anticipated flow requirement?
No.
Yes, it does. So that again, that's another evaluation criteria in the requirement for the amount of flow that you need. There's
Yeah.
I think it's section D that kind of says, are you sprinkled, and if you are sprinkled, to what degree, and it gives you a discount on the flow.
Okay.
Which can go up to a 50% reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess that was the other reaction I had in terms of using the village hall, and I appreciate you'll move to average, but if the village hall is a huge risk, frankly, I would prefer to just sprinkle it.
Yeah.
Far cheaper.
Okay, I guess that wasn't a good idea. Is anybody, I think we know where Chris is coming from. There'll be a report, September 14th council meeting. And we can decide at that point where we go as a committee.
Can you hear me?
If that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Ian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim?
The one thing to consider, we've got a series of pages in this booklet, the receipt of our documents, and it looks like it's a list of questions for the fire underwriters report. Is that going to be filled out?
The one form was filled out by Chris and sent to the fire chief. And the other two forms, the fire chief has been asked to complete them, and he's waiting for information from the trustees, because his response would affect both Belcarra and Anmore. So the fire chief is taking that, I believe, to their next trustees meeting.
Okay, but presumably once those questions are all answered, it may or may not have some grading on our insurance rating, and that'll also help the fire underwriters people to make a recommendation on fire flows, will it not?
They'll be sent in when they're completed, yes. And then we'll wait and see what they say. Mm-hmm.
Jim, I might be speaking out of turn here. How, it might go the other way. The fire underwriters might say to you, we're not insuring you anymore.
I agree. I certainly recognize that also.
Right. So I personally, I would be reluctant to submit those forms if I were you guys right now, until you've gone through this process.
Your comment was what I was thinking.
But hey, it's nothing to do with me. It's totally up to you guys, and I would assume probably goes back to the water trustees.
Well, maybe it'll get more people to sprinkle their houses. I mean, I sprinkled my house 40 years ago, but that doesn't fix the problem we've got now.
Exactly.
Like we question, the committee questions as to what's happening here, as to why we're reaching out to the FUS to obtain what exactly is not very clear.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we've exceeded our time limit, and can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yep.
Jim, seconded by Martin. Okay, well, thanks very much for everybody attending, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye now.
Thanks, everyone.